You always asked, was the experience worth it? And I say, a lot of ways, I kind of lost my future, but in a lot of ways, I gained a lot more too. And one of the big concerns, is, I've had issues with Agent Orange.
No, I don't. I come from a very patriotic family. I mean, this country never gave a war that my family didn't show up to and was happy to serve in. And we've been in every single war. And so we kind of keep up with that because we have a lot of veterans in my family. And we've got a lot of Green Berets and SEALs and Special Forces. And even though knowing a lot about Vietnam and my mom talking about Vietnam when I was young and all of us discussing it, Agent Orange is not part of the discussion that came up readily and often. I mean, we never knew about Agent Orange. I don't think until very recently that anybody knew that we were trying to defoliage the entire country of Vietnam.
No, no, I don't. The problem with it is out of sight, out of mind. And a lot of people think, well, all the Vietnam vets are taken care of, but there's a huge number of guys that don't even have basic health care now because the system's so full they can't get into it right now. And then if you're not service connected, then you got big copays and stuff like that. So it's a big battle. I wish they were better informed, but it's kind of like old news.
Somewhat, but not really in depth, because it's something that you kind of forget.
It's too, I think that a lot of that goes back to with all the things that were happening and when you've got brothers, sons, fathers dying, defoliage operations aren't really paramount in your mind. I mean, that's not something that we're really going to think about. And so, because they kept it, they didn't even have to keep it off the radar. I mean, if you've got a father that died, you don't care really what killed him. You care that he wasn't there.
Now, we're celebrating the 30th. Vietnam vets are probably celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Agent Orange settlement. For me, it should have been still an open settlement instead of a closed settlement. I was involved as an original plaintiff with Bob Slinky and Bill Burke with the attorneys of Nausch and Morgan, who represented the veterans of Colorado. We had an organization called Agent Orange Coalition of Colorado.
I think they've gotten a lot more information, I think, in the last maybe 10 to 12 years.
he never really mentioned Agent Orange. They started sending him a newsletter after he started going to see him, because at first he didn't accept any medical help or anything from the veterans. He just went out being crazy. But then his arms were itching, always itching, and the doctors told him it was Agent Orange. They told him that it was from running through the jungle with his machine gun like this, and the foliage, he would brush away the foliage with this part of his arm as he ran, and that that itching from here to his forearm on both arms was something that was going to last forever, and that it was caused by Agent Orange. And then they gave, in the 90s, that was in the 80s that they told us that, and then in the 90s they came and said that perhaps some of his internal problems, like the hepatitis C and stuff like that, had come from the Agent Orange.
I want to say back in the late 70s, early 80s, when there was just talk about what had happened, exposure to it, and I really didn't. I think through the lawsuit is when I really found out more. And in 1983, I actually went to Fort Lyons, and I went there for an Agent Orange exam, actually.
My mom's a nurse, and in 1973 or 4, the summer, I got this sore on my shoulder that wouldn't heal. It would get right to the point of healing. The scab would fall off, and I'd have another sore. And so my mom was a nurse, and she said, and a lady friend of mine said, well, a sore that doesn't heal is cancer. Okay, so I went to Dr. Courtwright here in Pueblo, and he looked at it, and they cut it out about the size of a quarter, about 1.5 inches deep, and they said it was a basal cell. But I had just come out of Vietnam a little bit less than 2 years earlier, and he said that I was, right at well over 20 years of medicine, I was like the second youngest guy he'd ever took that kind of cancer out of his shoulder, and that was in the early 70s, a couple years out of Vietnam. And then they had the big lawsuit, which this is the 30th year on, and the lawyers kind of robbed us, and got almost all the money. There was chicken feed left over for the veterans after the lawyers, and the on both sides got through picking our bones, and they robbed us. There's blood on their hands, in my opinion, and that's not a political statement. That's a fact to me.
In January of 1982, when I went to the VA Medical Center, and I went there for rectal bleeding, vomiting, nausea, weight loss, fatigue. So they did a series of tests on me and everything. And when they gave me my folder to carry around, because then, back in '82, a lot of stuff wasn't on computers then. We weren't that high tech. I saw where it said Agent Orange, and I met a fellow Vietnam vet by the name of Bob Solinki. And he told me, he says, "Oh, you got Agent Orange?" And I said, "Yeah, what is it?" So he started explaining to me about what Agent Orange was. And told me to read this book, GI Guinea Pigs. So after that, him and I communicated, and I started learning more about Agent Orange.
There it was mostly just to do the job and try to survive and get out. That was it. No real thought of what was actually transpiring or what was happening in real time.
They didn't tell us, we were a piece of equipment, as they called us, and they could care less,
While he was in Vietnam, he was mostly on a need-to-know basis, and not being one of the members that was loading it or moving it or spraying it, he wasn't told anything about Agent Orange because his function was combat.
There's no way that they would tell us. I don't think there's no way we really knew, other than you could smell it. When you loaded on the aircraft and that, you could smell it. You're exposed to it. It's right there. It's already been proven that if you were in Vietnam, you were basically exposed to Agent Orange.
All the places we would go, I would see where I thought it was burnt. The vegetation was burnt, like with. It seemed like that. I thought what they were using was like maybe some flammable liquid or something, because that's what it looked like to me. Where the vegetation would be all dead and burnt like. And that's what I thought it was. Yeah. In retrospect, you look at it and you go, well, wow, what was actually happening and what were they actually doing was horrendous. But just really didn't understand it at the time.
Well, I was really surprised. I grew up down in the Mississippi Delta, a big agricultural area, and it looks a lot like Vietnam because we have triple canopy jungles, trees that are just covered in vegetation and swamps. The Mississippi Delta, looks a lot like Vietnam. I mean, it was like, and I got there and I saw these big bases, like vast bases at Saigon, Da Nang, Bien Hoa, and you'd go for miles and miles and you wouldn't see any trees or vegetation because there was no trees or vegetation. They sprayed all the time. We had Sergeant Gonzalez used to ride around in an APC and he was spraying all the time. And you know what he was spraying with? Yeah. Agent Orange, so yeah, it's we were basically living on a hazardous waste dump.
One of the things that did happen to me in Vietnam was I had started to get terrible acne, and what happened was I attributed it to, of course, it's a tropical jungle area, humidity, heat, a lot of moisture, and to me that's what I thought it was. I developed quite a bit of really bad acne on my chest, my back, under my chin here, and on the sides right here. Matter of fact, I still get some. But what happened was I took it as just that part. When I came back, within a year, it was still happening, and it was still pretty bad. And I was kind of ashamed of going places, or that kind of made me kind of shy away from people, be more introverted. I wasn't aware of that until when they did start talking about it in the 80s about chloroacne, and that was something that I do have. 13 or 14 years later is when I come to realize that it was exposure to Agent Orange.
People that would be on the flight where they would spray it, they would come back and they would say, wow, And some of them later would kind of break out with a few blisters and stuff like that. They didn't know what it was from.
He suspected the hazard when they dumped that whole load on him and his entire unit, because a lot of times recon, nobody knows exactly where they're at, and so he never believed that anybody dumped it on him, intentionally. But they did dump a load of Agent Orange on him and his entire unit, and they all had breathing problems and was gasping for breath and stuff, as he described it right then and there.
If you're living in a very closed, confined place on top of a waste dump, basically, that they've been spraying for an entire year, and it rains a lot, so you might be walking in it too, and so it's one of those things where a lot of guys thought, they were safe for years and years. It was only the infantry guys getting it, but now they're finding the guys in the rear units probably might have been more exposed than a lot of the people out in the field, because they were living in it for an entire year, basically, on a sprayed area. There was no vegetation at all. I mean, no trees, no nothing, all rocks and dirt, and mud.
Yes, definitely so. And it's there's been other, I guess, studies on dioxin and different things, but I don't know that the results have ever been really fully exposed to or brought out in the light of day. I think what's happening too is that there's too much there's too much pressure, both politically and economically, for there not to be something come out because of the way things happen. I think it's evident with Agent Orange exposure and any other types of exposures, whether it's pesticides, whether it's any other chemical exposure. It usually takes a few generations before they come back and say, "Oh yeah, this is exactly what." But we did have, preliminary tests that this happened. Now, I think it's way overdue now. But the thing is that with the chemical companies and the political people, kind of what I'd say in bed together.
Dow Chemical Company and Monsanto made billions of dollars. And other chemical companies made billions of dollars. Not only using Agent Orange, but you had Agent White, Agent Blue, Agent Purple, Agent Pink, and Dapsone, and other chemicals that they used.
They call them the rainbow colors. There's about 7 or 8 colors: pink, orange, red, purple. They call them the rainbow pesticides, the rainbow colors, and all of them were in the same category as Agent Orange.
He conceived a child when he came back from Vietnam, and she's in her late 40s now, and she has bipolar disorder, which isn't something that runs in our family or his family, but that hasn't really come out as a symptom of Agent Orange, but it makes me wonder. And she also, when she was 16 years old, she had to have all of her reproductive organs taken out. And there's been obscure studies. The actual United States government, I don't know if they've ever issued any studies or looked into this, or if they agree with this. They kind of are in denial about this. From what I've seen, is that the reproductive organs are really harmed by the poison and the herbicides. And a lot of the Vietnamese people and the Vietnamese government are recognizing that the herbicides have been harming the next generation, and that the reproductive organs is a weak point when it comes to breathing all of this stuff in.
What I've seen on the internet and through this website, Children of Vietnam Vets, they're talking about children and grandchildren of Vietnam vets. Some of the symptoms of our autism and diabetes type 1, and I got 2 granddaughters that got that. And then I got a son that always had problems vomiting when he grew up, I have a first cousin, Charles Solano, who died about 5 years ago of Agent Orange related symptoms. And his son has Down syndrome. Just recently over at PCC, we had a workshop there, and some of the audience members gave testimony to their children and grandchildren who were suffering the effects of Agent Orange. It was very interesting, to have a big young man that was 48 years old get up, and toward the end of his speech he had tears in his eyes because he was talking about his father, who he said he's seeing wilting away.
If you got chemicals in your body, there's a chance you could pass it on to your children and grandchildren. Sometimes it'll jump a generation even, the genetics, and chemical poisoning is going to be about suffering too.
I think it's evident with with Agent Orange exposure and any other types of exposures, whether it's pesticides, whether it's any other chemical exposure, it usually takes a few generations before they come back and say, oh yeah, this is exactly what, but we did have, preliminary tests that this happened,
I believe that it's kind of like the DDT, that the first person that gets affected by it or gets sprayed by it actually has a lot of symptoms, and they're terrible, but they're not as bad as what they pass on. Because even though Glenn had the itching arms and a lot of scars and the COPD and all of the respiratory problems, which I think were from the Agent Orange, even though he had those, he could still have children. He could still have a full life in a lot of ways. But the next generation, she was robbed of all of her legacy. She'll have no legacy. She'll have no children. She's carrying the scars that he gave her, and he felt really bad about that. That added to the emotional scars that he had from Vietnam.
Barrett esophagus syndrome, they checking for precancerous cells, my digestive tract, for heartburn, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and discovered that I had a tumor that was benign. So right now, I'm waiting for the VA to approve this medication. And once I get it, I'll just have to see how that works. It's just right here, dead center. It goes in about 3 inches. They're still doing tests on me, a lot of blood tests, and they're still trying to determine why, I have weight loss, vomiting, nausea, fatigue, low energy. I've lost quite a bit of weight, maybe about 40 to 50 pounds in the last year and a half. I just wished I had a better appetite. I want to live life, I want to travel a little bit. I want to spend time with my family, my grandkids. And sometimes it's hard for me to get out of bed. Just don't even feel like doing nothing,
89% of his entire body was scar tissue from the war.
Wow.
That was part of the reason that they gave him his disability, is because when they gave him his examination, he was just almost all scar tissue.
I am a diabetic, and of course the chloracne.
Diabetic neuropathy in my feet, and that's painful stuff. And then I had a pancreatitis. In my early 20s, I had skin cancers removed. I've had probably 30, 40 precancerous lesions removed. Stuff like that, rashes from time to time. Diabetes too. So a couple of years ago, I was declared a chemical vet, but I was one of the first ones. I filed in the 77, 78, and I think there was 40,000 guys filed in, and I think that about 700 of them, they gave a disability to. The rest of them, they kind of gave us the middle finger salute, and wished us well. And so a lot of guys lost their future, as well as PTSD and stuff like that. One friend claimed he had a lot of jungle rot and stuff, and his feet would get awful, man. They, just peeling and burning. And
I had a friend that died about 6 months ago. His name was Larry Monster Mondragon. And he was well known in the biker community, really a good person. But he got real sick. Within 2 or 3 months, he died.
He was 60 years old. He died last year, in 2013. And he passed, he had a kidney or liver transplant years before. And he had problems with it, but the last 7 or 8 years he was doing good. And he was in Nam, and he rode choppers, and he was around spraying too. I remember him saying that guys were getting sprayed once in a while, and he got sick about last summer. I'd say July, and then this Larry. There was a reason we called him Monster. He was a big guy, big old strong guy, and and he started losing weight, and he couldn't eat, and he was having a lot of problems with his stomach, and then he ended up in ICU, and about 3 or 4 months later he passed away.
We should be aware. We have the technology now, so if you hear that a friend or relative or somebody that you know has Agent Orange or suspected Agent Orange, then get on the computer and find out what's going on. What medications are they taking? You know, what doctors are they seeing? What symptoms are they having? And see how they can, you can possibly help out. If I have a problem, and I know other people have problems that are Vietnam vets, and their children are having problems, and their grandchildren are having problems. The one thing that we can support is the Senate Bill 1940. And that died in committee hearing in 2009. And I'd like to introduce legislation and ask Senator Udall to go ahead and just bring that up for committee hearing again. If it died in committee hearing, it can be probably brought up for discussion. So I'd like to hear it be brought up for discussion again.
There's not any other way I think that it can be put. It's just we have to say, wait a minute, this is wrong, and we have to take care of that. Of course, awareness is one, but once you attain awareness of something, then what are you going to do? Are you going to take action, or are you going to just say, okay, it happened, and not do anything?
A lot of us have got just enough stuff that won't kill us right away, but it's slowly working to do that. Quality of life is everything. If you don't have quality of life, who in the heck wants to live in pain constantly all the time? That ain't no fun. And hopefully if it does come, it'll be at the very end, so we can just turn off the light switch and go to sleep. But chemical stuff don't usually work that way. There's usually going to be some nasty side effects before you end it.
This is Glenn McDowell, 17-year-old Marine, Special Forces 1st Recon. That's what he looked like when he left boot camp. This is what he looked like at 45 after Vietnam. If you look at this face, it's not the face of a 45-year-old man. I kept all my wedding vows but one, and death did not do us part.